So we get to finally talk about another amazing device that came out a couple of years ago. It's turning 5 years old this year, and I'm going to definitely tell you the Samsung Galaxy S8 is one of my favorite phones that have ever came out. And just recently, about a couple of weeks ago, it actually ended up getting another software update specifically for security, and it's actually very interesting that Samsung is still supporting this device, but this just means to me that some people are still using this phone, and people are still interested in this phone as well. Now, I don't think it's necessarily completely 100% worth it as of right now, but this device, when you look at it and when you feel it in the hand, Samsung really outdid themselves. And when I felt my Galaxy S8 and when I feel my Galaxy S21, I mean, there are a lot of ways where my Galaxy S8 is a more superior phone, which we'll get into in this video. If you want to pick up some phones I would recommend this year though, links will be down in the description. You can get them from there and help support the channel at the same time. Now on the front of the Samsung Galaxy S8, we have a 5.8-inch Super AMOLED display, and it is a 1440p panel. When you look at the Galaxy S21 that just came out, that device doesn't even have 1440p, it's 1080p. Now that's still a better panel, but this is a very high resolution display. It still looks very beautiful, but the other thing is that this panel curves on the side. Now there's something about curved panels that just make me go crazy, and this specific phone still looks so beautiful with that display, and I've talked about it for many years now, but this is still a very good looking phone as well. Now we have a little bit of bezel on the top and the bottom, which is kind of big nowadays, which is funny, but at that time it was revolutionary compared to the Galaxy S7, and even now it's really not that bad. Of course it's gotten smaller than then with the Galaxy S21s and stuff, but still a very, very good looking phone on the front. But here's the craziest thing. This phone has that USB Type-C port on the bottom, which is cool, but it also has a headphone jack, which is something we really don't see that much anymore. But we also had a microSD card slot on this phone as well. Now, I can't really tell you how many phones nowadays still have microSD card slots. I think a lot of the Samsung Galaxy A series of devices do, but very few flagships, if any, have it. And I can't think of any. None of the Pixels, none of the Samsung Galaxies have it. So this phone had a crazy advantage at that time. I mean, it was kind of like a normal feature, but now if a phone brings a microSD card slot again, that's like a crazy big feature, and this phone actually has it, which is amazing. Now we also have a glass back on this thing with wireless charging, which is really cool, a fingerprint sensor on the back, and overall when you feel this phone and you just kind of mess around with it, it is still such a good feeling phone. It's a great performing phone just in terms of the way it looks and everything, and I am a humongous fan of the way this phone feels and still looks in 2022. Now let's go and hit on the camera setup, because this thing is definitely kind of a hit or miss. Now, my specific model has a lot of burn-in, if you couldn't already tell on the display, and we had a single 12 megapixel camera on the back. Now the reason I mentioned that burn-in is because the viewfinder looks a little bit weird, which is totally okay. Now in the front, we had a 8 megapixel wide-angle lens, but we also had another 2 megapixel iris scanner, which wasn't really used for anything besides just unlocking your phone. Now you can do 1440p video on the front, but you can actually do 4K at 30 on the back, which is totally okay from 2017. If you think about all the other phones that came out in 2017, for the most part, could also only do 4K at 30. I'm talking about this phone, the other Note that came out this year, I think the Note 8, and then as well as the iPhone 10s and iPhone 8 Pluses. So totally okay, we expect that. But a big thing to keep in mind is that this camera is still not that bad. It's definitely not perfect and it's definitely not amazing, but it's really not that bad of a camera. It still has quite a few features built into this, specific UI as well. It still has quite a few features built into this UI as well, which is really nice. And it's still a really decent camera for its age and everything. Now, I would still kind of say that the Galaxy S8's camera isn't as good as the iPhone X's camera, because that is a dual camera setup, and it's still a little bit of a better camera. That can do 4K at 60 on the back actually, but this is totally okay for the most part as well. Now, when it comes down to taking videos and photos and everything, I think it's okay, but the problem you're going to be getting is that if you're using apps like Snapchat or TikTok, a lot of these applications can't really utilize the specific camera to its full potential, unlike the dedicated camera app can. So because of that, you're kind of getting this strange experience on some of those phones. It's a very choppy experience in terms of video, but the photos look pretty good and I'm kind of a fan of it. But I will tell you, if you're planning on getting the Galaxy S8 this specific year, just do keep in mind that the camera may not be as good as you expect it to be. Even if I sat here and said it was so good and this and that, I'm only saying that because of its age. The age of this device and the price of it kind of makes me think it's pretty decent. But other than that, I probably wouldn't recommend picking it up. So in terms of that pretty much covers it up in the camera standpoint. Now another thing that I actually mentioned earlier on this year was actually with the, software update. It's not getting any more software updates anymore. So keep that in mind. It's definitely not going to be supported for, a very long amount of time. And that's pretty much how it will go on from now. It's not going to last forever. And One UI 1, which was, 3 years ago already or 4 years ago, it's pretty outdated as of now, but you do have to keep in mind that these phones do get updates and it's totally okay at this, point. But it did get that security update, which was very interesting to me. I was not expecting it for it to get any more updates now, but it actually randomly did, and that's even more impressive than I was expecting it to be. So in terms of that covers it up in the, software standpoint. Now, another big thing with this phone is actually with its, performance. This device has that Qualcomm Snapdragon 835 chipset inside of it, and there were a couple of different models of this phone, but each of these models had 4 gigs of RAM. So I guess there was only one model of this phone, the 64 gig model with 4 gigs of RAM, and I still think 4 GB of RAM is totally fine in this day and age. I don't think it's like a horrible performing phone, but the funny thing is that the performance of this phone is actually still kind of decent. Now, I don't want to give the impression that this phone's performance is amazing or anything like that, but the more interesting thing about this phone is the fact that it can still handle a lot of things that I throw at it. And when I compared this phone to something like my, Samsung Galaxy S21, of course, those phones are faster and everything, but there's just something about this phone, feeling it in the hand and maneuvering through it, and knowing that it's a 2017 phone that stopped getting software support many years ago. I'm just so surprised about the quality of this device and just how great of a feeling phone and how great of a performing phone it is still. Now, that's only relative again to its age and its price. If I wasn't looking at that, like if this was a brand new phone of this year, it would be a horrible performing phone. It really wouldn't be that good, and I don't think a lot of people would like this phone because of that. But I do like some aspects of this device, and I would tell you that the fact that this device still turns on, it still has, pretty decent power to it, I think that goes to something. I think that goes without saying that it kind of gives it a little bit of an extra feature set here and there. Now, if you're trying to play super intensive heavy games and stuff, it's not really going to give you that big of an experience. It's not going to, it's not going to be that great of an experience for you. But I do think if we're just doing some basic things here and there, I think it'll kind of get the job done for sure. So in terms of that covers it up there in the performance side. Now, this thing also has a 3000 mAh battery inside of it too. And I do think, it was good at the time. It's just not really that good anymore, which is kind of expected when you get a phone like this and it's 5 years old and the batteries, degrade over time. So it's not really going to be that great of an experience yet. But I definitely do think at that time when it first came out, it was great. But as of right now, it's really not that good anymore either. So in terms of that covers it up there. And to kind of sum up this video and to answer the question, I still think the Samsung Galaxy S8 is a very decent phone for sure. I think for what it was at that time when it first came out, it's actually pretty impressive. I would not recommend buying it anymore though. That's pretty much the easiest way to say it. I wouldn't recommend people buying it, but I'm still surprised about the capability of this phone. And when I compare this phone against all the other phones that have came out this year, including the iPhone 13s and the Samsung Galaxy S21s, this is still a very interesting phone just because of that. And I'm actually a huge fan of the way this phone is. Now, again, I wouldn't recommend picking it up, but if you are still using it, I would love to hear your opinion on it. Again, don't pick up this phone just because I'm talking about it or whatever, but it's a pretty decent phone for what it is in this day and age. So in terms of that pretty much covers it up. If you guys have any other questions or anything like that, let me know in the comment section as well. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.